Hello and welcome to the Group 10 presentation on remote learning and work. And first we are going to begin with an overview. So remote learning and work have been present since the onset of widespread internet back in the late 90s, early 2000s when technology caught up. However, due to the social distancing from the COVID-19 pandemic, we've seen a large influx the past 2020 and the beginning of this year. Due to that influx, we've seen that perhaps the 5-day work culture that America is used to might not be the most efficient way to operate now that we've broken the limitations that cause that to be needed. We've also seen that this shift to a more remote approach has allowed more students, insofar as learning is concerned, to attend a university despite the distance that might be an issue, say long car drives or it even being out of state. While there are many benefits to the shift of remote, we also need to examine what issues there are in initially implementing it and also sustaining it as far as how things have been so far. Some important definitions to know when we're talking about remote learning or work. Telecommuting, that's just another word for the remote working. It's to work without needing to travel to a central location, such as an office, a warehouse, or a storefront. VPN, virtual private networks, are used by big companies to allow access to network drives, printers, and other network activities while working remotely with a secure connection. VoIP, which is Voice over Internet Protocol, is used by companies to act as a phone that works well for call centers so that their agents don't need to be in person. And desktop virtualization is a way to virtualize the software needed and sometimes even the hardware through a thin client so that someone can work from home with the same amenities they would have in an office.
Relevance to engineering design and practice. COVID-19 has thrust us into the middle of a massive workplace experiment. Like with any experiment, we should develop hypotheses around remote work and gather data to understand its impact. Many companies have unwittingly incorporated common remote work assumptions that will lead them to lower productivity levels, more frequent morale issues, and higher attrition rates. To understand this better, here are some of those assumptions. False assumption. Geographic location doesn't matter. Time zones of remote teams should be clustered to be within 3 hours of each other. If your team operates with 3 hours or more difference, expect their code reviews and interactions to suffer. False assumption. Remote work always increases employee freedom. Flexible hours can easily become an imposition. If you assume your engineers will set their own hours, employees with more seniority or status will implicitly dictate everyone else's activities and hours. False assumption. Remote work decreases office distractions. In the weeks immediately after the first COVID lockdowns, it was noticed that engineering meetings dramatically increased. Now meetings have returned to their base level, but Slack interruptions are at an all-time high. The investment on remote work made now will pay dividends far into the future. Not only are remote offices the current standard, after COVID-19, expect most offices to operate on a hybrid model. An effective response to this current situation will enable a thriving future. Applications of work from home and study. There are many things that are being done to put work from home and study into operation. Here are some of the most important. Build a permanent workspace. Designate an area of your home specifically for getting work done. Get comfortable office furniture. Depending on the amount of space available, consider purchasing a large desk, bookshelves, and a comfortable office chair. Discover your high productivity periods. Some individuals are morning people. For others, their most productive time in the workday is the evenings. Exercise and stretch regularly. Exercising naturally boosts endorphins, and regularly stretching helps you maintain a great posture. Use video chat. Make it a point to chat with colleagues, team members, or clients each day. Connect with your team off-site. Plan an annual team off-site meeting to strengthen the working relationship. Stay vigilant against security risks. Don't forget to keep your home office equipment secure. Understand how to protect yourself from common security threats. Work from home and study impact on society. Work from home and study has become business as usual. There are significant impacts to society as a whole. Here are a few. Less commuting, good for climate change and emissions, but less traffic tickets, which is bad for government. Drop in demand for office space. Expect to see downtown properties repurposed from commercial office space into residential and other uses. Fewer people downtown. Downtown restaurants and other businesses in commercial districts will see fewer customers, and many will close. Spending moves to the suburbs. Fewer people downtown, so money will start to be invested further away from the city. Here are links to the references for the covered areas listed.
Some of the issues we encounter when first implementing telecommuting are as follows. There are some members of the workforce who live in areas that don't support high-speed internet, which can make remotely working unfeasible for them. In a general sense, the majority of the current workforce is not technologically fluent, as some people in the tech field would be, so it might be hard for them to suddenly have to have this higher literacy with it to do their jobs. And also, training a new employee can be more difficult without having the in-person guidance that some jobs might want or require to make sure the job is being done correctly. To ensure secure connections when working from home, companies want to ensure they're using a VPN to make sure that any private or sensitive data isn't let out through unauthorized connections. When working from home, a certain level of discipline and self-motivation is required, as there's no immediate manager that might let an employee know if there is any issue. And to look outside that scope, many restaurants focused around business areas are heavily dependent on the business traffic they would normally receive from office workers. So now they have to adapt to this new model where people don't need to travel as much, which is a new issue in of itself. Shifting over to remote learning now, many of the initial issues are still the same, but some of the other issues that might be present are the high level of discipline in lower grades, such as K through 12, that would be required as they are in adults, so they aren't expected to already have the discipline, which could be an issue in the more self-motivated learning they need now. Another issue at the younger grades would be socialization, an issue faced by homeschooled students as well, as we need to ensure that at a young age they're properly being introduced to their peers to develop proper social skills.
Working from home has two sides of the story. You have ethical issues from the employers themselves and also the employees. So we're going to start by talking about the ethical issues imposed by the employers onto their employees. When people think of working from home, they view sick days as kind of out of the equation. They think, okay, well, if you're sick, you're at home away from other employees, so you are still able to work. This can pose some serious health risks on the employees, as they will have this will hinder their ability to rest and recover from that illness. And when an employee is constantly working sick, this can lead to burnout, causing the overall efficiency of their work performance to decrease. Now, working from home can also have some serious effects on people's mental health. A recent Monster study indicated that 51% of respondents felt burnt out from working at home. This is primarily due to the fact that most people view their home as their sanctuary of rest and relaxation, and mixing your home with workplace can cause feelings of turbulence and turmoil, and this just leads to feelings of anxiety, depression, and exhaustion. Um, Many adults who shifted to the remote setting during the COVID-19 pandemic not only had to take care of their house responsibility and their house and their work, but they were also thrown on top of that, expected to take care of their children as they were learning from home, which led to even more exhaustion. Now, here we have another interesting graphic given by Indeed.com. This was a survey asking users of Indeed how happy they were over the course of the COVID-19 pandemic. So starting from the beginning of the pandemic, you see there was kind of a certain increase of happiness at the start of the pandemic. There's really no reasoning as to why, but my hypothesis is just people may have been excited for the new remote work style of working. Um, but as you see, as the months go on and reality sort of steps in, you see that the happiness kind of decreases by 10 points here from before the pandemic, which goes to show that a lot more people don't really want the remote setting, which most likely is the reason of the burnout feeling and depression and loneliness. Now, this graph given to by Buffer.com shows the biggest struggles with working remotely. You see the most common response is unplugging after work, loneliness, and collaborating or communicating with others. When you shift working from the office to working at home, even if you're mainly working by yourself, there's still that lack of communication going on that you would have received from working at the office. On top of that, on the employee side, you have distractions at home that can interfere with working, and different time zones, staying motivated because of burnout, and just other issues too on top of that. But now, employers aren't the only ones who can be unethical. You have also the employee side of things. Employees have a big role in the issues because some employees may take advantage of their remote setting. It can be extremely difficult to track and monitor all the employees working remotely. So because of this, some employees just take advantage by stealing time, by doing either mediocre work or no work, taking longer breaks than they should be. Um, on top of that, family and pets are big distractions and can potentially take the employee away from the computer for hours at a time if there's an emergency or anything like that. Now, to talk more about the employee distractions, as this is kind of the big topic, is during the COVID-19 pandemic, most children and parents switched to remote style of learning. This definitely was very distracting for many parents working at home as they had to ensure their child was at their desk, either working or in class, as children are even more easily distracted than adults. So they now had more responsibility than usual if everything with the COVID-19 pandemic never happened. Even for people who don't have children as distractions, you still got cell phones, televisions, and other hobbies distracting the employees. This would constantly allow the employee to take breaks by just looking at their phone for 5, 10 minutes. This would lead to a lot more time theft in the workplace, a lot more money being spent on nothing really for the company. So this would definitely affect their overall productivity rate.
And so we move on with the challenges with distance and learning and work. Um, we can break these into a complex series. For starters, the concept of working and studying is obviously been increasing a lot since the invention of the internet. The more advanced and more reliable that web connections and high speeds become, it is the easier for schools and jobs to promote this new way of engaging with your officials and with your classmates, and that helps to keep creating a new way of communication. We can see how we have to make a lot of adjustments and adapt and make improvements in order for anything to work, just like we did with the car, just like we did with airplanes. So we're gonna try to break down the main challenges, and we've labeled them as first, quality of instruction; secondly, this cost effectiveness; the third would be misuse of technology; and the fourth, we would have the misuse of equipment. They all represent a big factor on what needs to be improved in the near future if the concept of working and studying in a few months after COVID is to thrive and to keep expanding. As we try to break down these main challenges, firstly, we have the quality of instruction. Obviously, as in person work or class, we have the quality of your boss or of your instructor. It really depends on their attitude and the attitude of their department. If they are not willing to work in person, they're more than likely not uh, likely to work well on a distance manner. So, first of all, we need to go back to the basics and make sure that we have our staff motivated for any sort of outcome, being in person or off person. Um, the thing is, since this is a new concept, most work administrators or school administrators or teachers feel more comfortable working the old way, working with uh, working with the in-person sort of class than to be in a in a software or in a computer teaching their stuff. So their quality usually decreases even more as they do a distance learning or work. We also have to take a look at cost effectiveness. It is possible for a program not to be efficient enough, but also if the output of which are actually produced do not contribute to the program of objectives, then you're wasting resources on a software that you're not probably utilizing to its maximum capacity. Also, there's a huge cost associated with licenses and with the technicians and the training of the instructors. We also have the misuse of technology, which is, as we mentioned, the possibility that it's not being used to its full potential, which makes it a waste of money because that means that you're not really using everything as it is planned. And also, lastly, we have the problem of equipment. This is both for a job or if you're home. This is for both ends of your employee and your employer. If your employer has problem with their with their computer or their media, they will have problem communicating with you, and so will you if you end up running into a trouble with your own piece of technology. So this is something that should be looked at in the future, trying to maximize their longevity and so that they can work as efficient as possible. And just to reinforce the idea on why it is important to keep improving, we're going to look at this chart. It is from the last year, 2020 and 2021 in California. As we can look at the distance learning, we can see how only 16% of people due to the pandemic were reportedly full in time in person instruction, as in you have an 84% between a hybrid instruction and a distant learning only instruction, which shows you how big and important it is for us to keep improving in this manner. And as we have challenges, we also have a big opportunities with telecommuting implementation. We're going to look at the productivity, performance, the real life skills, and the continuity of education that comes with this concept. Firstly, we have productivity, as teleworkers are on average 35 to 40% more productive than their office counterparts and have measured an output increase of at least 4.4% since working remotely. We also have how the performance with a stronger autonomy by location independence worker produce results of fewer quality defects. We see how maybe being in a comfortable manner helps them being more calm and focus better. We also have real life skills, as this looks and seems to be a really important and something that will keep improving and that will be present in the future. It is important for people to prepare for that for their next job or to keep growing into a company, and same for students to get ready for real life jobs where this will be a big part of it. And also the continuity of education, it plays a big role because it helps people work off campus and get a better education or continue their education to help them get better wages.
Before I get more in detail about ways to help you get started, if you are interested in learning more, I deemed it appropriate to ask yourself these 5 questions, just to get a feel to see if it's something that you would do. 1. Why do you want to work or learn remotely? 2. Can you manage your workload on your own? 3. Would you feel comfortable working or learning alone every day? 4. Do you have the skills and tools to work or learn successfully? And 5. Would you be just as effective working or learning remotely as you would in person? If you wish to continue learning more about remote work or learning, then there are resources available for you to utilize. Since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, most companies and learning institutions had to adjust from their traditional operation and convert to having their employees and students to work and learn remotely. Since that change, most people have grown accustomed to the idea of working or learning from home. If this is something that may interest you, the most effective thing to help you would be guides and testimonials from employees and students on how to do so successfully. There are guides available to help anyone who wants to learn about remote work or those who want to transition into it. There you can find tips and tricks from employees and students who have already transitioned, as they would be able to help teach you productivity tips for working remotely, tips on how to have a successful semester remotely, tools and skills that you'll need, an overview on the advantages and disadvantages of remote work and learning, and testimonials from real employees and current students who could tell you their experience on the matter, a few of which has been included into this presentation.
In compiling this project, our team made use of Microsoft Teams as required of us. In this slide, you can clearly see the buckets we created. We created one for every member of the team, as well as a catch-all one for tasks that all of us should contribute to. You can see that we also made use of the checklists to ensure when a task was completed, it was marked so that we can all see the current progress our team is making. We used Teams to delegate the tasks and also track progress, as mentioned previously, just to make sure we were going to finish in time for these presentation. We also used the file section to congregate our resources we found so that all of us had access to any resources we were using in case it helped with their specific topic. And we also used it to ensure we were keeping in communication with each other so that if any of us ran into any issues, we could tell another member and we could possibly get some help on it quick. Here are some questions that we feel after the end of our presentation the audience should be able to answer. What is meant by remote working or learning? What are some of the barriers to implementing remote working and learning? What are some of the observed benefits of remote working and learning? What can you do personally to make your own remote experiences better? And why might some companies and organizations be opposed to a majority of remote employees or students compared to the previous model before the pandemic of commuting?